Captain Lee Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Terran exploration vessel New Seoul, watching the stars drift past the main viewing screen. The ship had been traveling through the outer rim systems for 3 months now, mapping new worlds and searching for signs of intelligent life. So far, they had found nothing but empty planets and dead rocks floating in space. "Captain, we are picking up something strange on the sensors," said communications specialist Choi Yu-jin from her station. Her fingers danced across the control panel as she tried to make sense of the readings. "It looks like a ship, but the design is nothing like ours." Lee moved to her station and looked at the display. The object was massive, easily 3 times the size of the New Seoul. Its hull was dark and angular, covered in sharp edges and weapon ports that seemed to glare menacingly even from this distance. "How far away is it?" Lee asked. "About 2 million kilometers and closing fast," replied Tactical Officer Kim Jae-ho. "Whatever it is, it will be here in less than an hour." Chief Engineer Park So-min looked up from her engineering console. "Captain, I am reading energy signatures I have never seen before. This ship is powered by something we do not understand." Lee nodded slowly. This was what they had come out here to find. First contact with an alien species. He had imagined this moment many times, but he had always pictured it happening in a more controlled environment, perhaps around a space station or on a planet's surface. Not out here in the empty darkness between stars. "All stations prepare for first contact protocols," Lee ordered. "Communications prepare the universal greeting message. Tactical, keep weapons offline but ready. I want to show we are peaceful but not defenseless." The next 40 minutes passed slowly. The alien ship continued its approach, growing larger on the screen until its details became clear. It was truly massive, bristling with weapon arrays and armored plating. Strange symbols were carved into its hull, and bright lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. "They are hailing us, Captain," Choi Yu-jin announced. "The signal is coming through on multiple frequencies." "Put it through," Lee said, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of stars, it now showed the interior of the alien ship. The sight made several crew members gasp in shock. The creature standing before them was enormous. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a body covered in thick chitinous armor that looked like it had been carved from black stone. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in clawed hands that could easily crush a human skull. Its head was insect-like, with compound eyes that reflected the light in disturbing ways. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh, like grinding metal. The universal translator worked quickly to convert its words into something the humans could understand. "I am Admiral Thekvar of the Velkari Empire," the creature announced. "You have entered space that belongs to us. Your small, weak ship is now our property. Your soft flesh will serve us well as slaves." Lee felt his heart racing, but he kept, his voice calm and steady. "I am Captain Lee Hyun-woo of the Terran exploration vessel New Seoul. We come in peace and did not know this space was claimed. We would be happy to discuss territorial boundaries and perhaps establish diplomatic relations." Admiral Thekvar leaned forward, his compound eyes studying Lee with what seemed like amusement. "Diplomatic relations? You think your pathetic species has something to offer the mighty Velkari Empire? Look at you, small, weak, with only 2 arms and soft skin that would not stop even the dullest blade." The Admiral turned to speak with other Velkari on his bridge, their harsh language filling the communication channel. Lee could not understand their words, but their body language was clear. They were discussing the humans like they were inspecting cattle at a market. "Captain," whispered Kim Jae-ho, "their weapons are powering up. I am reading massive energy buildups across their ship." Lee raised his hand slightly, signaling for patience. He turned back to the screen where Admiral Thekvar was facing them again. "We have decided," the Velkari announced. "You will surrender your vessel immediately. Any resistance will result in your deaths, though we would prefer to keep some of you alive for study. Your species appears even weaker than the last one we conquered. I understand your position," Lee said carefully, "but I must respectfully decline. We are explorers, not conquerors. Perhaps we can find a peaceful solution that benefits both our peoples." The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Tekvar's head tilted to one side, as if he could not believe what he had just heard. The other Velkari on the bridge seemed equally shocked. "You refuse?" Tekvar asked slowly. "A weak creature in a weak ship refuses the demands of the Velkari Empire. We prefer to solve problems through discussion rather than violence," Lee replied. "Surely beings as advanced as yourselves understand the value of peaceful cooperation." This seemed to enrage the Admiral beyond measure. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke to his crew in their harsh language. When he turned back to Lee, his compound eyes blazed with anger. "Your cowardice disgusts us," he snarled. "You speak of peace because you are too weak to fight. The Velkari do not negotiate with inferior species. We take what we want." The communication channel closed with a sharp crackle. "Captain, multiple weapon locks," Kim Jae-ho shouted. "They are firing!" The new soul shook violently as energy beams struck her hull. Lights flickered, and alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Park So-min's hands flew over her controls as she tried to keep the ship's systems online. "Shields are failing," she called out. "We cannot take many more hits like that." "Return fire," Lee ordered. The exploration ship's modest weapons fired back, but they barely scratched the massive Velkari warship's armor. Another volley from the enemy sent sparks flying from control panels across the bridge. "Hull breach on deck 7, someone shouted over the noise. Lee gripped his command chair as the ship bucked under another impact. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. The Velkari had attacked without provocation, treating the humans like animals to be captured or killed. But as Lee watched his crew working desperately to keep their ship alive, he saw something that Admiral Tekvar had missed. These humans were not breaking under pressure. Instead, they were adapting, finding solutions, refusing to give up even when faced with overwhelming odds. Park So-min had already rerouted power from non-essential systems to strengthen their remaining shields. Kim Jae-ho was coordinating damage control teams while simultaneously planning their next move. Choi Yu-jin was trying to jam the Velkari's sensors to buy them precious seconds. None of them were screaming or panicking. They were working. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump," Lee announced. "Engineering, I need everything you can give me." "Jump drive is damaged, but I can give you one short hop," Park So-min replied, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked. "It will not be far, but it might be enough." The new soul vanished just as another Velkari energy beam passed through the space where it had been. They reappeared several million kilometers away, hull cracked and systems failing, but alive. "Admiral," Tekvar stared at his empty tactical display for a long moment. The weak humans had escaped. More troubling, they had done so while under fire, showing coordination and determination he had not expected from such a seemingly fragile species. "Pursue them," he ordered. "I want to see how long these soft creatures can run." Admiral Tekvar stood on the bridge of his warship Dominion's edge, all four of his arms clenched into fists. The human ship had vanished from his sensors 3 hours ago, but he could still track the energy signature from their damaged engines. The trail led deeper into unexplored space, away from any known trade routes or inhabited systems. "Status report," he demanded from his tactical officer. "The human vessel is moving slowly, Admiral. Their jump drive appears to be severely damaged. At their current speed, we will intercept them within 2 standard cycles." Tekvar's compound eyes reflected the light from his bridge displays. "Send word to Battle Group 7. Tell Admiral Cothran to bring his ships to these coordinates. Also contact the cruiser Void Piercer. I want 3 ships hunting these humans." His communications officer, a younger Velkari with bright green markings on his carapace, looked up from his station. "Admiral, is such force necessary for one small exploration ship?" Tekvar turned his massive frame toward the younger officer, his presence filling the space between them. "These humans escaped from us. No species has done that in over 50 cycles of conquest. Other races will hear of this. They will think the Velkari Empire has grown weak." The communications officer quickly returned to his work, sending out the HFY requested messages. Within hours, 2 more Velkari warships would join the hunt. What had started as a simple capture mission was becoming a matter of imperial pride. Meanwhile, the new soul limped through space like a wounded animal. Emergency lights cast red shadows across corridors filled with the smell of burnt circuits. and melted metal. The ship groaned and creaked as its damaged hull struggled to hold together. Captain Lee Hyun-woo made his way through the ship, checking on his crew and assessing the damage. In engineering, he found Park So-min elbow-deep in a control panel, her uniform stained with grease and coolant fluid. "How bad is it?" Lee asked. So-min looked up, pushing a strand of hair from her eyes. "Bad, but not hopeless. The jump drive took a direct hit. But I think I can fix it. The main engines are running at 60% power. Hull breaches are sealed, but we lost most of our defensive systems. How long for repairs? Give me 12 hours for the jump drive. Maybe 18 if we run into complications." She paused, wiping her hands on a rag. "Captain, even if I get everything working, we cannot fight that ship. We are an exploration vessel, not a warship." Lee nodded. "I know. We just need to stay ahead of them long enough to reach friendly space." In the medical bay, Dr. Han Gil-dong was working on the most seriously injured crew member. Ensign Kang Min-ho lay on a biobed, his right arm completely severed by flying debris during the attack. The young man was conscious but pale, his eyes focused on the ceiling. "How are you feeling, Min-ho?" Lee asked, approaching the bed. The ensign tried to sit up but winced in pain. "I will be fine, Captain. Dr. Han says I can have a cybernetic replacement when we get back to Earth." What struck Lee was not the injury, but the young man's attitude. There was no despair in his voice, no complaint about his situation. Min-ho was already thinking about how to adapt, how to continue serving, despite his loss. "The prosthetic will actually be stronger than my original arm," Min-ho continued with a weak smile. "Maybe I can finally beat Petty Officer Young at arm wrestling." Lee squeezed the ensign's good shoulder. This was what made humans different, he realized. They did not break when faced with adversity. They found ways to become stronger. On the bridge, communications specialist Choi Yu-jin was monitoring long-range sensors and trying to send messages to other human vessels. The damaged communications array could barely reach beyond the local system, but she kept trying. "Any luck reaching Fleet Command?" Lee asked when he returned to the bridge. "The signal is too weak, Captain, but I am picking up chatter from some civilian ships about 3 systems away. Merchant vessels mostly. I cannot establish two-way communication, but they might receive our emergency beacon." Tactical Officer Kim Jae-ho looked up from his station. "Captain, the Valkyrie ship is closing. They will be within weapons range in 8 hours, and I am detecting 2 more ships joining them." Lee felt his stomach sink. 3 Valkyrie warships against 1 damaged exploration vessel. The odds were impossible. "Can do we jump before they reach us?" he asked. So-min's voice came through the comm system from engineering. "Negative, Captain. I need at least 4 more hours, and that is if nothing else breaks." For a moment, the bridge fell silent except for the hum of damaged systems and the occasional spark from overloaded circuits. Lee could see the worry in his crew's faces, but he also saw determination. These people had signed up for exploration missions, not combat, yet none of them suggested surrender. "Options?" Lee asked. Kim Jae-ho pulled up a tactical display. "We could try hiding in that asteroid field ahead. The rocks might interfere with their sensors. Or we could vent plasma from our engines," suggested Yu-jin. "Make it look like we had a catastrophic failure. If they think we are dead, they might stop hunting us." So-min's voice came through the comm again. "Captain, I have another idea. It is dangerous, but it might work. We could overload our fusion reactor and use the explosion to mask a jump. The Valkyrie would think we self-destructed rather than be captured." Lee considered each option. All of them involved risks that could kill his crew. But doing nothing would certainly result in capture or death when the Valkyrie caught them. "How dangerous is the reactor overload plan?" he asked. "Very dangerous. If I miscalculate the timing by even a few seconds, the explosion will destroy us instead of masking our escape. But if it works, the Valkyrie will never know we survived." Lee looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Young Yu-jin at her communications station, still trying to reach help despite their damaged equipment. Kim Jae-ho studying tactical displays, looking for any advantage they could use. These people trusted him to make the right choice. All right, Lee decided. We try the reactor overload. But first, we send everything we learned about the Valkyrie to any human ship that can receive it. Other crews need to know what they are facing. Yujin nodded and began preparing a data burst transmission. I can encode our sensor readings and tactical analysis into an emergency beacon. Even if we do not make it, the information will reach human space eventually. Hours passed as So-min worked frantically on the jump drive while simultaneously preparing the reactor overload sequence. The Valkyrie ships grew steadily closer, their massive forms now visible on the long-range sensors. Admiral Tekvar studied the fleeing human ship with growing irritation. It should have been destroyed hours ago, yet it continued to run. The humans showed no sign of slowing down or attempting to negotiate. They simply kept moving like some primitive animal fleeing a predator. They cannot run forever, his tactical officer observed. Their ship is badly damaged. Soon they will have no choice but to surrender. But Tekvar was not so certain. In his many cycles of conquest, he had seen dozens of species surrender when faced with superior force. Most begged for mercy. Others tried to bargain with information or resources. A few fought desperately and died quickly. These humans were different. They ran, yes, but not in panic. Their movements were calculated, purposeful. They were planning something. Increase speed, Tekvar ordered. I want to end this before they surprise us again. The 3 Valkyrie warships accelerated, their powerful engines closing the distance rapidly. Behind them, other Valkyrie officers monitored the pursuit with interest. Word of the human encounter was spreading through the fleet. Some viewed it as entertainment, others as a curiosity. None of them understood that they were witnessing something that would change everything. The humans were not just running. They were learning, adapting, and preparing for what came next. And what came next would teach the Valkyrie Empire that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who refuse to accept defeat. The binary star system of Kepler 307 stretched before the new Sol like a cosmic trap. 2 massive stars orbited each other in a deadly dance, their gravitational fields creating waves of distortion that could tear a ship apart. Behind the limping, human vessel, 3 Valkyrie warships closed in like hungry predators. Captain Lee Hyun-woo stood on his damaged bridge, watching the tactical display with grim determination. Chief Engineer Park So-min had managed to repair the jump drive, but they needed time to charge it. Time they did not have. Captain, the Valkyrie ships will be in weapons range in 15 minutes, reported Kim Jae-ho from his tactical station. Their lead ship is the same one that attacked us before. Lee nodded, studying the swirling gravity fields of the binary stars. Most ship captains would consider flying near such a system to be suicide. The gravitational forces were unpredictable and deadly, but humans had never been known for taking the safe path. So-min, how long until the jump drive is ready? Lee asked through the comm system. 20 minutes at minimum, Captain. I am pushing the reactors as hard as I dare. Lee looked at the tactical display again. The Valkyrie would reach them 5 minutes before they could jump. 5 minutes was a lifetime in ship-to-ship combat, especially against 3 warships. New plan, Lee announced to his bridge crew. We are going to attack them. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Communications specialist Choi Yoo-jin turned. From her station, her eyes wide with shock. Captain, did you say attack? She asked carefully. That's right. They expect us to run or surrender. They do not expect a damaged exploration ship to turn around and fight 3 warships. Kim Jae-ho looked up from his displays. Sir, with respect, that is because it would be insane. We have minimal weapons and damaged shields. They will destroy us in seconds. Lee walked to the main viewing screen, where the binary stars cast their deadly light across space. Maybe. But we have something they do not expect. We have desperation and we have these stars. He turned back to his crew. The gravity fields from those stars are incredibly strong. Most species cannot handle the acceleration forces required to navigate near them safely. But humans can endure more G-forces than most aliens. We are going to use that. Somin's voice crackled through the comm. Captain, are you suggesting we dive into the gravity well of a binary star system while fighting 3 warships? That's exactly what I am suggesting. Yujin, send a message to the Velkari ships. Tell them we surrender and request a meeting to discuss terms. Yujin hesitated for a moment, then began transmitting the message. On the main screen, the image changed to show Admiral Thekvar on the bridge of his flagship. The massive Velkari looked pleased with himself. So, the humans finally see reason, Thekvar said, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of triumph. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in immediate death. We understand, Lee replied calmly. We are shutting down our engines and weapons as requested. The communication ended, and Lee immediately turned to his crew. All hands, prepare for high-G maneuvers. Medical, get everyone into acceleration couches. Engineering, I need everything the engines can give us. Captain, Kim Jae-ho said quietly, this plan will probably kill us. Lee looked at his tactical officer, a young man who had served with distinction for 3 years. Probably, but running will definitely kill us. At least this way we go down fighting. The next few minutes passed in tense silence as the Velkari ships approached. Admiral Thekvar's flagship moved into boarding position, confident that the humans had given up. The other 2 warships flanked them, ready to provide support if needed. Now, Lee whispered. The new Soul suddenly burst to life, her damaged engines roaring at full power as she dove toward the nearest star. At the same time, every weapon the ship possessed opened fire on the Velkari flagship. The attack caught the Velkari completely off guard. Plasma bolts and missile salvos slammed into their ship's hull, overloading shields that had been powered down for boarding operations. Alarms blared across the alien vessel as damage reports flooded in. But the real shock came when the human ship disappeared into the gravity well of the binary system, moving at speeds that should have crushed any living being aboard. On the new Soul's bridge, the crew endured crushing acceleration that pressed them deep into their seats. Lee felt his ribs creaking under the pressure, but he forced himself to stay conscious and give orders. Engineering, reroute all power to weapons. He gasped through gritted teeth. Somin's reply came as a painful whisper. Power transferred, Captain, but I do not know how long the ship can hold together under this stress. The new Soul whipped around the first star in a tight orbit, using the gravitational slingshot effect to build incredible speed. As they came around the far side, they found themselves directly behind the Velkari formation. Kim Jae-ho, despite the crushing G-forces, managed to target the rear ship in the enemy formation. Firing all weapons, he announced. The concentrated fire from the human ship struck the Velkari cruiser's engines, causing a chain reaction that tore through the vessel's power systems. The alien ship began to drift, powerless and helpless. Admiral Thekvar watched in stunned disbelief as the human ship performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. His tactical officer was reporting massive damage to one cruiser and moderate damage to his own flagship. How are they surviving those acceleration forces? He demanded. Unknown, Admiral. Our medical scans suggest their species should be dead, from the G-forces alone. The human ship swung around the second star, building even more speed. This time they came at the Velkari formation from above, diving down like a bird of prey. More weapons fire lanced out, striking Thekvar's flagship amidships. Return fire, Thekvar roared. Destroy them. The remaining Velkari ships opened fire, but the human vessel was moving too fast and too unpredictably. It danced between the binary stars like it was part of some cosmic ballet, using gravity itself as a weapon. On the new Soul, the crew was being pushed to their absolute limits. Several had lost consciousness from the extreme forces, but those still awake continued to fight. Somin managed to jury-rig additional power to their weapons, creating energy outputs that exceeded the ship's design specifications. One more pass, Lee announced, blood trickling from his nose due to the extreme acceleration. Make it count. The final attack run took them between both stars, through a gravity field so intense that space itself seemed to bend around them. The ship's hull groaned and cracked, but it held together through sheer determination and excellent engineering. Kim Jae-ho, fighting to stay conscious, lined up his weapons on Admiral Thekvar's flagship. "Target locked," he whispered. Every functional weapon on the new Sol fired at once, creating a plasma burst that lit up the space between the stars. The energy beam struck the Valkyrie flagship's main reactor, causing a feedback loop that knocked out most of their systems. The new Sol emerged from the gravity well battered but alive, her hull glowing red-hot from atmospheric friction and energy discharges. Behind them, 2 Valkyrie warships drifted damaged and powerless, while the third was trying to restart its engines. "Jump drive ready, Captain," Somin reported weakly. "Do it," Lee ordered. The new Sol vanished in a flash of light, leaving behind 3 confused and defeated Valkyrie warships. Admiral Thekvar sat in his command chair, surrounded by sparking control panels and injured crew members. In all his cycles of conquest, he had never seen anything like what just happened. A single damaged exploration ship had attacked 3 warships and won. More disturbing was the realization that the humans had endured acceleration forces that would have killed most Valkyrie. They had turned their own physical limitations into advantages and used the environment itself as a weapon. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Thekvar felt something he had never experienced before. Fear, not of death in battle, which was honorable, but fear of an enemy that fought in ways he did not understand. The humans were not like any species the Valkyrie had encountered. They did not follow the expected patterns of warfare. They adapted, improvised, and refused to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds. As damage control teams worked to repair his ship, Thekvar stared at the empty space where the human vessel had been. Somewhere out there they were escaping, to warn their people, and when they returned they would not be alone. The Valkyrie Empire had just learned its first lesson about humanity, but it would not be the last. The emergency beacon from the new Sol reached Earth 3 days after their desperate escape from the binary star system. Admiral Song Ki-tae was reviewing fleet deployment reports in his office at Terra Command when his aide rushed in with the decoded message. Song read the report twice, his weathered face growing darker with each word. Alien contact, unprovoked attack, human crew fighting for their lives against impossible odds. The tactical analysis attached to the message painted a clear picture of a technologically advanced and aggressively hostile species. "Get me Fleet Admirals Chen, Okafor, and Rodriguez," Song ordered his aide. "Emergency conference in 10 minutes. Also, alert all ship captains in the 5th Fleet. We may be going to war." Within hours, the story had spread throughout human space. Not through official military channels, but through the informal networks that connected human communities across dozens of star systems. Merchant captains carried the news between trading posts. Colonial governors shared updates with neighboring settlements. Families with relatives in the exploration service contacted friends and distant cousins. This was how humans worked. Not as a single unified government, but as a vast network of interconnected communities that looked out for each other. Captain Yoon Sung-hee was loading medical supplies onto her cargo hauler Inchin's Dream when she received a call from her brother, a communications officer at Luna Station. After hearing about the new Sol's battle, she immediately changed her flight plan. "Where are we going now, Captain?" asked her first mate, looking confused at the sudden course change. "To help some people who need it," Yoon replied simply. "Send a message to all the merchant ships in this sector. Tell them what happened to the new Sol. Ask who wants to join us." By the end of the day, 17 merchant vessels had agreed to rendezvous at the coordinates where the battle took place. They carried medical supplies, repair equipment, food, and most importantly, the stubborn human refusal to abandon their own people. Similar scenes played out across human space. Mining crews in the asteroid belts began converting their industrial equipment into weapons. Passenger liners rerouted to carry volunteers who wanted to help in whatever way they could. Even deep space research stations contributed by sharing sensor data and communication relays. Admiral Thekvar was unaware of this growing response as he worked to repair his damaged battle group. His flagship was functional but wounded, with hull breaches and failed systems throughout the ship. The cruiser that had been hit in the engines was still powerless, drifting in space like a dead whale. Status report, Tekvar demanded from his engineering officer. Main weapons are back online, Admiral. Shields are operating at 70% efficiency. The cruiser Bone Crusher will need at least 2 more days before its engines are operational. Tekvar's compound eyes reflected the light from his tactical displays. The human ship had escaped, but they would not get far in their damaged condition. More importantly, reinforcements were coming. Admiral Kothron was bringing a full battle group of 12 ships to join the hunt. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. We are receiving a message from Fleet Command. They want a full report on our encounter with the unknown species. Tell them we discovered a new race of primitives with crude technology. We are pursuing them to capture specimens for study. Victory is assured. But even as he spoke those words, Tekvar felt a nagging doubt. The humans had not fought like primitives. Their tactics had been creative and unpredictable. More disturbing, they had shown a level of physical endurance that exceeded Velkari capabilities. 3 days later, Admiral Kothron arrived with his battle group, bringing the Velkari force to 15 warships. It was an overwhelming display of firepower, enough to conquer most star systems single-handedly. So these are the humans who gave you trouble? Kothron asked, studying the tactical reports from their bridge-to-bridge conference. Tekvar bristled at the suggestion that he had been defeated. One small ship caught us by surprise. It will not happen again. With your battle group added to mine, we can eliminate any resistance they offer. Good. The High Command is very interested in this new species. They want live specimens and detailed analysis of their technology. But when the combined Velkari fleet reached the coordinates of their next target, they found something they had not expected. The human presence had grown. Admiral, the sensor operator reported, I am detecting 43 human vessels at various positions throughout this system. The signatures include military ships, merchant vessels, and civilian craft. Kothron leaned forward in his command chair. 43 ships? I thought you said they were a minor species. Through the viewing ports, they could see the human fleet spread across space in a loose formation that looked chaotic compared to precise Velkari battle lines. But there was something unsettling about the seemingly random arrangement of ships. The largest human vessel was clearly a warship, bristling with weapons and armor plating. It was accompanied by smaller military craft that moved with practiced precision. But mixed among them were cargo ships, passenger liners, and vessels of unknown design that seemed to have been hastily converted for combat. They do not fight in organized formations, observed Kothron's tactical officer. How can they coordinate their attacks without proper command structure? The answer came moments later, when the human fleet suddenly burst into motion. Instead of moving as a single unit under central command, each ship seemed to know exactly what to do. They flowed around each other like schools of fish, creating overlapping fields of fire while avoiding collisions. Admiral Song Kitai stood on the bridge of his flagship Inchen's Hammer, watching the Velkari formation approach. His fleet was a mixture of military vessels and civilian craft, but every captain knew their role. All ships, this is Song. Remember, we are not trying to win a traditional battle. We are trying to teach these aliens that humans are not easy. Pray. Make them work for every meter of space. The battle began when the Velkari opened fire at maximum range, expecting to destroy the smaller human ships quickly, but the human formation scattered like leaves in the wind, making targeting difficult. Captain Yoon's merchant ship suddenly appeared behind the Velkari left flank, her cargo bays converted into missile launchers. She fired everything she had, before disappearing behind an asteroid. Other civilian ships followed similar hit-and-run tactics, darting into attack and then vanishing before the Velkari could respond. The mining vessel Titan's Fury surprised everyone by ramming a Velkari cruiser at full speed. The collision destroyed both ships, but it opened a gap in the alien formation that the human military vessels exploited ruthlessly. What kind of species uses civilian ships in military combat? Kothron demanded, watching merchant vessels exchange. Fire with his warships. A desperate one, Tekvar replied, but his voice carried less certainty than before. The battle raged for 6 hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The Velkari had superior firepower and armor, but the humans fought with a creativity and determination that frustrated every tactical prediction. When human ships were damaged, other vessels immediately moved to assist with repairs or evacuation. When ammunition ran low, cargo ships shared their supplies. The entire fleet operated like a single organism, each part supporting the others. Most disturbing for the Velkari was the human response to casualties. When ships were destroyed, the surviving crews did not retreat or surrender. Instead, they fought harder, as if the death of their comrades had made them more dangerous rather than demoralized. By the end of the engagement, both fleets had taken heavy losses. 7 Velkari warships had been destroyed or disabled, while the humans had lost 12 vessels of various types, but the human fleet showed no signs of withdrawing. Admiral, Cothran's communications officer reported, "We are detecting more human ships approaching from multiple vectors, at least 20 additional vessels." Cothran and Thekvar exchanged glances. This was not how conquest was supposed to, work. When the Velkari attacked a species, that species either surrendered or was quickly destroyed. They did not call for help and continue fighting against overwhelming odds. "Sir," the sensor operator added, "long-range scans show human activity increasing throughout this entire sector. Ship movements, communication traffic, resource allocation. It appears their entire civilization is mobilizing." For the first time in his career, Admiral Cothran gave an order he had never expected to speak. "Signal the fleet. We are withdrawing to defensive positions." As the Velkari pulled back, Admiral Song watched them go with grim satisfaction. They had not won, but they had not lost either. More importantly, they had shown the aliens that humans would not be easy victims. "Send a message to all human colonies," Song ordered. "Tell them what we learned here today. These Velkari are dangerous, but they can be fought. And tell them that Earth stands with anyone willing to stand against conquest." The message spread through human space faster than any ship could travel, carried by quantum communications and shared among the networks that bound human communities together. Within days, every human settlement knew about the Velkari threat and humanity's response. The aliens had expected to find easy prey. Instead, they had awakened something they did not understand. Humanity was not a sing. The final battle came to the Kepler 442 system 6 weeks after first contact. What had started as a simple hunt for one exploration ship had grown into something neither side had expected. Admiral Thekvar commanded a massive Velkari battle fleet of 37 warships, the largest force the Empire had assembled in decades. Opposing them was a human fleet that defied all military logic. Over 200 vessels filled the system, ranging from Admiral Song Kaitai's mighty dreadnought Inchin's Hammer to tiny courier ships that had been hastily armed with mining lasers. Captain Lee Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of Admiral Song's flagship, his repaired ship New Seoul now serving as a command vessel for the civilian ships in the fleet. His crew had become heroes throughout human space, their story inspiring countless others to join the fight. "It's incredible," Lee said, watching the tactical display. "When we first met the Velkari, I never imagined it would lead to this." "Admiral," Song nodded, his weathered face grim. "Neither did they. Our intelligence suggests the Velkari Empire has never faced this kind of resistance before. They're used to species that surrender quickly or die trying to fight conventional battles." The human fleet was spread throughout the system in what appeared to be complete chaos. Merchant vessels hid behind asteroids next to military destroyers. Passenger liners had been converted into electronic warfare platforms. Even an old colony transport had been turned into a massive missile carrier. On his flagship Dominion's Edge, Admiral Thekvar studied the human formation with growing unease. In the weeks since their first encounter, every battle had taught him more about these strange creatures. They did not follow standard military doctrine. They adapted constantly, learning from each engagement and changing their tactics. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the humans have positioned ships throughout the entire system. Our sensors show vessels hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, and even in the upper atmosphere of the gas giant. They are trying to surround us," observed Admiral Cothran from his own ship. "But their formation is too spread out. We can defeat them piecemeal." Thekvar was not so sure. Human tactics seemed chaotic, but there was always purpose behind their apparent madness. Begin the attack, but maintain tight formations. Do not let them separate us. The battle began when the human fleet suddenly erupted into motion from dozens of hiding places. Ships appeared from behind asteroids, emerged from planetary atmospheres, and dropped out of hyperspace at precisely coordinated moments. But this time, the humans did not rely solely on hit-and-run tactics. Admiral Song had learned from previous engagements, and he had a plan. Phase 1. Execute, Song ordered. The merchant ships moved first, not to attack but to deploy thousands of small drones and sensor beacons throughout the battlefield. Within minutes, the human fleet had created a network of electronic eyes and ears that covered the entire system. "What are those devices?" Kothron demanded, as his sensors detected the spreading cloud of human technology. "Some kind of surveillance system," his tactical officer replied. "They appear to be sharing targeting data among all human ships." The implications became clear moments later when every human weapon in the system fired at once, all targeting the same Velkari cruiser. The body, concentrated firepower overwhelmed its shields and armor in seconds, destroying it completely. "Impossible," Tekvar breathed. "How are they coordinating attacks across such distances?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Chief Engineer Park So-min, now serving as the human fleet's technical coordinator, had linked every ship's computers into a single network. Military vessels, civilian craft, and even tiny courier ships were sharing information instantly. The Velkari found themselves fighting not individual ships, but an entire fleet that moved and thought as one organism. When they targeted human vessels, other ships would immediately move to provide cover. When ammunition ran low, supply ships would appear from nowhere to restock weapons. Most disturbing was the human response to damaged ships. Instead of abandoning vessels that were too hurt to fight, other crews would transfer over to keep them operational. The Velkari watched in amazement as a cargo ship's crew evacuated to a passenger liner, then returned with fresh personnel to continue the battle. "Sir," Tekvar's communications officer reported, "the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. It appears to be some kind of music." The sound that filled the communication channels was unlike anything in Velkari culture. Human voices raised in harmony, singing words of courage and defiance. The song spoke of standing together, of protecting the weak, of never giving up in the face of overwhelming odds. The music had an unexpected effect on both fleets. Human crews fought with renewed determination, their actions coordinated not just by tactical networks but by shared emotion. The Velkari, however, found the sounds disturbing and alien. As the battle intensified, individual human vessels began attempting increasingly desperate maneuvers. The converted passenger liner, New Incheon, rammed a Velkari battleship, its captain broadcasting a final message to his family on Earth before the collision. The mining ship Asteroid's Bane used its industrial equipment to tear through enemy armor at point-blank range. But the moment that changed everything came when the damaged New Soul, barely held together by emergency repairs, suddenly accelerated toward Admiral Tekvar's flagship. "They're going to ram us," the tactical officer shouted. Captain Lee's voice came across the communication channel, calm and determined. "This is Captain Lee Hyunwoo of the Terran vessel New Soul. Admiral Tekvar, you wanted to study humans. Here's your final lesson." The exploration ship, its hull glowing from damaged systems and overloaded engines, struck the Velkari flagship, amidships. The explosion that followed lit up the entire system, destroying both vessels in a burst of released energy that temporarily blinded sensors on nearby ships. But in the engineering section of the New Soul, reinforced and shielded for just this purpose, Park So-min and her team survived the collision. Emergency pods launched from the wreckage, carrying the survivors to safety aboard Admiral Song's dreadnought. The loss of their flagship threw the Velkari fleet into confusion. Admiral Kothron tried to maintain command, but the coordinated human attacks were overwhelming his remaining ships. Vessels that had seemed chaotically positioned revealed themselves to be part of a carefully planned trap. "All ships withdraw to Rally Point 7, Kothron ordered, watching another of his cruisers disappear under concentrated human fire. But withdrawal proved impossible. The humans had positioned ships at every possible escape route, and their electronic warfare systems jammed Velkari navigation computers. What should have been an organized retreat became a fighting withdrawal that cost the aliens ship after ship. When the battle finally ended 12 hours later, the Velkari fleet had been effectively destroyed. Only 7 ships remained operational, limping away from a battlefield littered with debris from both fleets. Admiral Kothran sat in his command chair, surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists. In one day, the humans had destroyed more Velkari warships than had been lost in the previous 10 years of conquest. How? He asked the empty bridge. How did a species we had never heard of destroy the Empire's finest battle fleet? The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Thekvar had survived the collision with the New Soul, rescued from his flagship's wreckage by human search teams. Now he sat in a medical facility aboard the human dreadnought, trying to understand what had happened to him and his worldview. Dr. Lim Haiwan, the human xenopsychologist assigned to communicate with the captured Velkari, had spent hours trying to explain human nature to her patient. Your species fights to conquer, she told Thekvar during one of their sessions. You attack, others to expand your territory and gather resources, but humans fight for different reasons. What reasons? Thekvar asked, his voice weak from his injuries. We fight to protect what we love, our families, our communities, our freedom to choose our own path. When you attacked the New Soul, you weren't just attacking one ship. You were attacking everything those people represented to the rest of humanity. Thekvar thought about this for a long time. In Velkari culture, warriors fought for glory and conquest. The idea of fighting to protect others, especially at the cost of one's own life, was foreign to their understanding. Captain Lee destroyed his ship to damage mine, Thekvar said finally. His crew could have escaped. Why did they choose to attack? Dr. Lim smiled sadly. Because they knew it might save other human lives. Because they refused to let you continue hurting innocent people. Because that's what humans do when cornered. We don't just fight harder. We fight smarter. And we fight together. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Thekvar began to understand that strength was not just about superior weapons or tactical advantage. It was about something deeper, something that could not be conquered through force alone. The humans had not just defeated the Velkari fleet, they had shown the aliens something they had never encountered before, a species that became more dangerous, when threatened not less. A people who would sacrifice everything to protect each other, even if it meant destroying themselves in the process. The Velkari Empire would never be the same, and neither would Admiral Thek. 6 months had passed since the battle at Kepler 442, and the detention facility on Luna looked nothing like the prison Admiral Thekvar had expected. The rooms were comfortable, with soft lighting and furniture designed for beings of different sizes and shapes. The human guards were polite and professional, treating their alien prisoners with respect that confused and disturbed the captured Velkari. Thekvar sat in what humans called a common area, reading from a tablet that contained thousands of human historical documents. The device had been given to him freely, along with access to human literature, music, and educational materials. No Velkari prison would have offered such luxuries to enemies. Admiral, you have a visitor, announced Guard Sergeant Kim Dong-hyun, approaching with his usual courteous manner. Dr. Lim Hae-won entered the room carrying 2 cups of tea, a ritual she had established during their many conversations. The xenopsychologist had become something unexpected in Thekvar's life. A friend, or at least what humans might call a friend. The concept was still difficult for him to understand. How are your studies progressing? Dr. Lim asked, settling into a chair across from the massive Velkari. Disturbing, Thekvar replied, accepting the tea with one of his 4 hands. I have been reading about your species' wars. The conflicts you fought against each other. Dr. Lim nodded. Which ones specifically? All of them. Your First and Second World Wars. Your colonial conflicts. Your civil wars. Thekvar paused, his compound eyes reflecting the soft light. You fought each other with the same intensity you showed against us. How is this possible? Humans are complicated, Dr. Lim admitted. We can be incredibly violent and incredibly compassionate sometimes at the same time. We fight fiercely when we believe in something, whether that's protecting our families or defending our ideals. Tekvar set down his teacup and accessed another file on his tablet. I read about something called the Battle of Stalingrad. Humans fighting other humans in the ruins of their own city, refusing to surrender even when faced with certain death. They continued fighting even when they had no ammunition, using knives and bare hands. That's correct. And then I read about the Berlin airlift, where the same nations that had been fighting each other worked together to feed civilians in a blockaded city. Enemy pilots risking their lives to deliver food to children whose parents they had been trying to kill months earlier. Dr. Lim smiled. You're beginning to understand something important about humanity. I am beginning to understand that I understand nothing, Tekvar said with what might have been frustration. In Velkari culture, war is simple. Strong conquers weak. Victor takes resources. Defeated species serves or dies. But humans. He gestured with all four arms. You make war complicated. Through the window of the detention facility, Earth hung, like a blue jewel against the black of space. Tekvar had learned that this small planet was home to billions of humans, all living in relative peace despite their history of violence. It was another contradiction he struggled to comprehend. Admiral, Dr. Lim said gently, what will you do when you return to Velkari space? The question had been weighing on Tekvar's mind for weeks. The prisoner exchange had been negotiated, and he would soon be released. But how could he return to his old life after everything he had learned? I do not know, he admitted. The Empire expects me to provide intelligence about human weaknesses. They want to know how to defeat your species in future conflicts. And what will you tell them? Tekvar was quiet for a long time, staring at the tablet in his hands. I will tell them the truth. That humans have no weaknesses that can be exploited through traditional conquest. That attacking your species will only make you stronger and more dangerous. Will they believe you? Some will. Others will think I have been corrupted by human propaganda. There will be those who demand another attack, believing that overwhelming force can succeed where tactics failed. Dr. Lim leaned forward. What do you believe? I believe, Tekvar said slowly, that the Velkari Empire faces a choice. We can continue trying to conquer through force and eventually face extinction when we encounter a species like yours. Or, we can learn to adapt, to find new ways of interacting with other races. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Lee Hyunwoo, now recovered from his injuries and bearing the insignia of a full admiral. His promotion had come with a new assignment, serving as the human military liaison for alien relations. Admiral Tekvar, Lee said with a respectful nod. I hope you are being treated well. Better than I deserve, Tekvar replied, which had become his standard response. I attacked your ship without provocation. I tried to enslave your crew, yet you provide me with comfort, education, and medical care. Lee pulled up a chair and joined the conversation. That's because we learned something from our history that took us a long time to understand. Treating enemies with respect often accomplishes more than treating them with cruelty. Your crew members who survived the ramming attack, Tekvar said, Park So-min and the others, they volunteered for a mission that could have killed them. Why? Because they knew it might save other people. Because they trusted their captain to make the right choice. Because they believed in something bigger than themselves. Tekvar absorbed this information, adding it to the growing collection of human contradictions that filled his mind. In Velkari culture, individual soldiers fight for glory and personal advancement. Sacrifice for others is seen as weakness. And what do you think now? Lee asked. I think, Tekvar said carefully, that perhaps we have been defining strength incorrectly. 3 days later, the prisoner exchange took place at a neutral space station in the border region between human and Velkari territory. Admiral Tekvar stood in the docking bay, wearing simple clothes provided by his human captors. In his hands, he carried a datapad containing copies of everything he had learned during his imprisonment. Captain Yoon Sung-hee, now commanding a diplomatic vessel, approached him with a small package. A gift from Dr. Lim, she explained. Human music and literature. She thought you might want to continue your studies. Tekvar accepted the gift with gratitude. As he prepared to board the Velkari transport that would take him home, Admiral Lee offered his hand in the human gesture of farewell. Whatever happens next, Lee said, remember that humans judge others by their actions, not their species. You have the opportunity to change how our peoples interact. The journey back to Velkari space took 2 weeks. During that time, Tekvar prepared his report, knowing that his words would influence the Empire's future policies toward humanity. But he also sent private messages to certain individuals within the Velkari military, officers he trusted to listen to difficult truths. The Imperial Council meeting was held in the Great Chamber on the homeworld, with representatives from across the Velkari Empire in attendance. Admiral Tekvar stood before the assembled leadership, his report displayed on screens throughout the hall. The humans are unlike any species we have previously encountered, he began. They do not fit our models of conquest or submission. Attacking them will result in the destruction of any force we send against them. Emperor Zalthakron, supreme ruler of the Velkari Empire, leaned forward on his throne. Explain this assessment, Admiral. Are you saying their technology is superior to ours? No, Majesty. Their individual ships are roughly equivalent to our vessels. Their tactics, however, are completely unpredictable. More importantly, their entire civilization mobilizes when threatened. They do not have a central authority that can be captured or destroyed to force surrender. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. General Vorthkhan, chief military advisor to the Emperor, stood to speak. Admiral, you spent months as their prisoner. Is it possible that your judgment has been compromised by their influence? Tekvar had expected this question. General, I encourage you to review the combat recordings from our encounters. Study the tactical data. The humans defeated a force 3 times their size, using converted merchant vessels and improvised weapons. This was not luck or temporary advantage. He activated a holographic display showing the battle at Kepler 442. Watch how they coordinate their attacks. See how civilian ships integrate seamlessly with military vessels. Observe their response to casualties. When we destroy their ships, their remaining forces become more dangerous, not less. The Emperor studied the tactical display with growing unease. What do you recommend, Admiral? Diplomatic contact, Majesty. The humans are not inherently aggressive. They attacked us only after we threatened them. If we approach them with respect, rather than conquest, they may prove valuable allies rather than deadly enemies. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members argued for another military campaign, believing that sufficient force could overcome human resistance. Others supported Tekvar's recommendation for diplomacy, seeing the wisdom in avoiding another costly war. Finally, Emperor Zalthakron made his decision. We will attempt diplomatic contact with the humans. Admiral Tekvar, you will serve as our initial emissary. Your knowledge of their culture makes you uniquely qualified for this role. 6 months later, Admiral Tekvar found himself aboard a Velkari diplomatic vessel, approaching the same space station where the prisoner exchange had taken place, but